Kansas. A land so wide you could lose yourself in it. A land that remembers every man who ever tried to tame it and buries the ones who didn't listen. Maple Creek wasn't even a creek anymore. Just a dry vein of dirt that cut through miles of wheat that refused to grow. The air hung thick with the smell of dust and rain that never came. And in the middle of it all, an old farmhouse. Its paint peeling like an old photograph left in the sun, and a man named Henry Calloway. Henry was a farmer made of habit, silence, and loss. He moved like the wind, slow, steady, and unwilling to stop. His boots sank deep into the soil every morning, as if the land itself was holding on to him, refusing to let him go, even as everything else already had. He'd been alone for a long time. Too long. His wife, Sarah, had passed 10 years ago. Cancer, the quiet kind. That takes. Without asking, he buried her under the hill where the sunlight touched last each evening. The same hill where she used to sit with a cup of coffee, watching the storms roll in. Since then, the farmhouse had gone quiet. The laughter gone. The warmth gone. Even the radio on the shelf had forgotten how to play. Each morning, he'd walk the fences, check the gates, talk to her in his head, told her how the weather was, how the wheat wasn't coming up right, how he missed her biscuits. And every evening, he'd sit on the porch with a cup of black coffee, watching the sun melt behind the fields, watching it all fade. Who's like I'm then came the letter. A white envelope, out of place on his dusty table. A program out of New York's Sustainable Agriculture Initiative. They said they could help modernize his farm, help it thrive again, help him adapt. He snorted when he read it. Adapt, he muttered. What the hell do they know about dirt? But he didn't throw it away. He kept it on the table, looked at it every night for a week. Maybe out of hope, maybe out of guilt, or maybe just because Sarah's photo on the wall seemed to be looking right at it. 2 weeks later, the truck came down the gravel road. A cloud of dust rose behind it, like the land itself was waking up to see who dared come that far. And out stepped a woman. City neat, hair pinned back, boots to clean, eyes too sharp for this quiet place. Her name was Leela Hart. Mid-30s. Bright smile that didn't quite fit in all this emptiness. She walked right up to the porch, held out her hand, and said, "Mr. Calloway, I'm here to save your farm." He didn't shake it, just looked her up and down, then said, "Ma'am, the only thing needs saving out here is good sense, and you're about to lose yours." That was how it started, the city girl and the dying land. Two strangers standing in the same dust, neither one knowing just how much they'd change each other. The first week felt like a long argument with the wind. Nothing stayed still, not the weather, not the soil, not even the two of them. Lila was full of energy and ideas. She carried a tablet everywhere, talking about crop rotation, soil microbiome, and sustainable output. Words that meant nothing to Henry, words that bounced off him like rain on tin. He'd been farming this land since before she was born. He knew how it felt, how it smelled when rain was coming, how to read the silence before a storm. And every time she told him science could fix what time had broken, he'd mutter under his breath, "Science ain't got no soul." By the third day, she'd already rearranged his barn. Beat the fourth, she broke his irrigation pump. Beat the fifth. He told her to go home. She didn't. Instead, she stood in his field, mud on her boots for the first time, and said, "I'm not leaving, Mr. Calloway. Not until I prove this land can still live." And something about the way she said it, like she was talking about him instead of the farm, made him stop arguing. So, they worked, side by side, arguing about everything from seed depth to coffee strength. But each night, when the work ended, the silence between them began to feel different. It wasn't cold anymore. It was companionable. Sometimes, she'd sit on the porch steps, sketching plans under the orange light of dusk. Sometimes, he'd bring her lemonade, pretending it was just because he made too much. One evening, she asked him about the name. "Why Maple Creek?" He smiled faintly. "Sarah named it. There was one maple she planted when we first moved here. said it'd grow tall enough to shade the house one day. He glanced toward the small, stubborn tree near the barn. It never did. Lila wrote something down in her notebook, quietly. Didn't say much after that. But the next morning, she was out there early, watering that tree herself. Day by day, something in Henry started to shift. It wasn't sudden. It wasn't loud. It was like soil softening after years of drought. He began to ask her questions. Not many. Just enough to show he was listening. How's that compost thing you're meekin' supposed to help? Or you think them city folks ever get dirt under their nails? And she'd answer everyone, smiling, sometimes laughing, sometimes catching herself looking at him longer than she meant to. There was a rhythm forming between them, old roots and new growth, meeting in the middle, trying to find a way to belong to the same earth. And though neither of them would admit it, Maple Creek was starting to change. The soil, yes. Also the air. The loneliness that once hung over the place like fog was thinning out, making space for something softer. It wasn't love yet. Not even close. But it was hope. And for two souls who'd forgotten what that felt like, hope was more than enough. Summer came angry that year. Thunderclouds thick and mean. Rain pounding like it wanted to wash the world clean. They tried to brace the fields, tried to save the seedlings, but Maple Creek had other plans. The flood came in the night, tore through the valley, drowned weeks of work in a few merciless hours. Henry stood in the rain, watching everything he'd built, everything she'd tried to save, vanish under muddy water. When it was over, the land was quiet again. Broken, he turned to her, voice raw. This place, it's cursed, Lila. I've been fighting it my whole life. She looked at him, eyes wet, not from the rain. It's not cursed, she said softly. It's just tired. Maybe it needs someone to love it different. He didn't answer, just walked away, into the wreckage, like a man walking into his own past. The next morning, she found him sitting by the maple tree, the same tree his wife had planted decades ago. Its roots were exposed, its trunk cracked. But in his hand, he held one small green leaf, and for the first time, he looked like he might cry. Tay revealed. Not perfectly. Not quickly. But together. Henry stopped fighting her ideas. Lila stopped trying to fix everything overnight. And between them, a strange kind of peace settled, one that smelled like rain on dry soil. Bilate, the fields, were alive again. New crops sprouting. Color returning to a place that had almost forgotten what living looked like. The town started paying attention. People came by, young folks wanting to learn, old neighbors offering tools and time. Maple Creek wasn't dying anymore. It was learning to breathe. One evening, when the work was done, Henry brought out an old record player, the same one he and Sari used to dance to on summer nights. He set it on the porch. The needle scratched, and an old country waltz filled the air. Soft and trembling. Lila lauget. La luget. You dance, Mr. Calloway. He smiled, a real one, weathered and warm. He held out his hand. She hesitated, then took it. Bare feet on old wood, two figures swaying under the Kansas dusk, the wind brushing past like a ghost, the maple tree whispering above them. He whispered, "Never thought I'd dance again," she said. "Maybe you just needed the right song." The record spun. The sky turned violet. And in that fading light, a farmer and a city girl found something neither of them had planned on a reason to stay. When winter came, the flood was just a memory. The fields slept under snow, and the farm stood steady, stronger than before. Henry still woke early, still walked the land. But now, Lila walked beside him, and every now and then, they'd stop under that maple, new leaves glimmering in the sun, and he'd whisper, "Sarah, you were right." It finally grew. The last dance at Maple Creek wasn't about goodbye. It was about beginning again, in the middle of nowhere, with someone you never expected, and a love you didn't know you still had left to give. Because sometimes, The land isn't the only thing that needs saving. Sometimes it's the heart that's gone fallow, and when it finally rains, everything blooms again.